This podcast is sponsored by funkytshirts.co.uk. Pedro Pascal, always loved to see him. And Denzel was the Oscar winner of the movie.
I want to thank the Academy.
Hello there, movie fans, and welcome to More Movies Podcast, number 67.
What? Take 67. Action.
Hello there, my name is Greg Fisher. His name is David Roberts. How are you doing this week, Dave?
I'm doing great, Greg. Christmas is almost upon us. It's nearly the end of the year. We've been watching loads of great movies.
Look at you with your Christmas tie.
I know, right? All
Fantastic.
ready for the Muppets Christmas Carol and Die Hard and all the favourites.
All the great Christmas movies, absolutely. Well, you are tuned into the podcast where Dave and I like to talk about the movies we've been watching lately. And I think this year, this is the 2024 wrap episode. So really, we have to firstly maybe have a chat about what we've covered so far this year. What do you say?
Indeed, yes, we do. It's been a pretty big year, really. And, across the episodes, we covered things like Anatomy of a Fall. Do you remember that from the beginning of the year?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm not sure whether it'll be on my list this year as a Christmas movie, although it is quite snowy and festive, but
yes.
Maybe just a little bit too dark for Christmas Day.
Yes, perhaps so. I think another film that's rather dark from the beginning of the year was The Zone of Interest as well, which is certainly not a festive cheer-up.
No, that's not a Christmas movie for sure, but a powerful one.
Very powerful film. Something we went and watched and really enjoyed. I think that one is a critical piece of film this year.
Oh, yes.
I guess a Christmassy film, The Holdovers, that came out end of last year.
We talked about it, as you say, last year, but it's one that I will be watching this year, and hopefully from here on in, I'll watch it every year. It gets part of that special collection of, I watch this every year.
That's it, yeah, it was. It was really great. And what else? As we got further into the year, we had, of course, Dune Part 2, that was awaited sequel.
The big event early on in the year, wasn't it?
It was. Of course, Timothée Chalamet. It was fantastic. It was exactly what we wanted it to be. And, of course, we're looking forward to early next year, Timothée Chalamet's back as Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown.
Absolutely. So they've been showing some of the people. I've been seeing previews over it over in the States, and I've seen a couple of different YouTubers have already got like their first thoughts and reviews for it. So I'm like, no.
Exactly. We don't want to see it yet.
I think for me, it's going to be one of those films that unless it's absolutely atrocious, I'm going to love it no matter what. Just from the trailers and the little spots so far, I'm like,
oh yes. We also had early this year the Iron Claw across here, wrestling film, which we covered. And, A24 again, really great stuff. There was Wicked Little Letters.
Brilliant British comedy. Jessie Buckley, Olivia Colman, Timothy Spall, very funny stuff. We enjoyed talking about that earlier. Actually, had you seen it by then?
I still haven't seen it. It's still on my list to get to.
It's Batman slaps Robin gif.
I was talking about funny films. Probably the funniest film of the year, Ricky Stenicki, starring John Cena.
That was not the funniest film of the year, but it was a good laugh.
I rather enjoyed that one.
It was like
so
a flashback movie, wasn't it? It was like we said in our podcast episode there, we talked about it, saying it was like the white poster movies of the Farrellys in the 90s, and it was like a revisit to all that.
Yes. And it was a big summer. There were some big films. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, that was a romp and a half. World War II craziness.
Guy Ritchie.
Like Dirty Dozen or something.
It was very much like the Dirty Dozen. I think we said the Dirty Dozen meets Inglourious Bastards.
Yes. And we had Furiosa, of course, the Mad Max sequel, which was rather good. I did feel it was unnecessary. I did say at the time, and there was some issues I took with it, but it was an enjoyable film.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good laugh.
I think the big one of the summer was The Fall Guy as well. That was a rather fun, stunt-filled action adventure film. One of my favourites of the year, Civil War.
Civil War. Now, this was a good film this year. That was
I
one.
thought that was.
It kind of walked that line between being like, yes, it was box office popcorn kind of fill the theatre kind of movie, but also had a slightly darker edge to it, which gave it that a little bit more gravitas.
And it had something to say, didn't it? You know, it was like, okay, there's a point here, and it's very apt in the current climate. We got round to finally watching Godzilla -1 as it was released across here.
Yeah, loved it.
Great fun.
Very well made movie. Definitely check out what we said about that if you're a fan of that film and haven't seen it.
Absolutely, go back, podcast 64. I mean, it is like the best Godzilla film, in my opinion, that they've made. Yeah.
I think so too.
There was Love Lies Bleeding.
Love that as well. A24 again.
A24 film.
Kristen Stewart, very, very good film. That Ed Harris.
Ed Harris. I love Ed Harris.
Now that's a hairstyle to kind of aspire to in your old age, isn't it? You know,
it is.
You get old, you go bald, and let's just grow the back out. Like
that's it. Get it going.
The Uber mullet.
It is a pattern this year. A24, just as usual, just being the best stuff around.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed it the most.
Oh yes,
we are A24 stans. Some people hate it, but I don't get that.
I don't get it.
There was also Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1.
Kevin
Costner, big epic western.
No one saw it.
No one saw it.
Nobody. We saw it, but nobody else.
We watched it, and you know, it was fine. I think you enjoyed it more than I enjoyed it, but it was still a good film from my perspective.
I think I did, yeah.
But we were supposed to get a month later Chapter 2, and we're still yet to see that.
That's how badly it did. That they haven't even been able to bring out Part 2 yet. That's how bad the box office was.
Which is a bit of a shame.
Well, yeah. He should have just gone, took the Netflix money and let it go out as a series, as we said.
Yes. Yeah, I think so as well. There was also, at that time, Kinds of Kindness. That was quite an experience.
Oh, that was an experience, yeah. Still thinking about that one. It was Yorgos Lanthimos, who I do think is fantastic. Poor Things was an absolutely excellent film. We've also talked about that a little while back, last year. But Kinds of Kindness challenged us.
It did. I think the most challenging film in a long time for me to sit through.
In the cinema, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different thing to watch something like that at home, isn't it? Because you can kind of, if you need to, pause it.
You can pause it and walk away.
Go
and
make a cup of tea. And then come back to it.
It was challenging. Deadpool and Wolverine, of course, this year. That was the big...
more recent now, but yeah, that was the big thing in
film.
Autumn, for sure.
Yeah, we talked about that on podcast 65, so go and check that out. Where we also talked about Trap, which was a piece of crap.
I think I enjoyed that more than you did. Let's say that it wasn't total crap, but yeah,
I wasted a whole £10 at the cinema to watch that.
I seen something the other day where someone said he did a very good job of creating a vehicle for his daughter's music career.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
and until I read that, I didn't realise that she was an aspiring music artist, not an aspiring actress. Maybe she's a bit of both, because she was a good actress in it, but I thought, she has got a music career as well. That's shameless, isn't it?
It is shameless.
Okay.
But that's what Hollywood stars do, right? Will Smith being an example.
How dare you mention him? Batman slaps Robin gif.
Oh, wow!
We got Rebel Ridge, which was my favourite film of the year still so far.
Really? Rebel Ridge your favourite? I mean, I liked it. I thought it was good, but no way is it my favourite film. I'm going to have to think about it during the course of the podcast, and I'll let you know at the end what my favourite film was this year, but not that.
It's certainly in my top 3 of the year. I think it was because it came out of nowhere and was such a solid piece for me that didn't really... There was nothing compromising about it. There was nothing that went, It was like, I enjoyed that. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't a sequel or a spin-off or part of a universe or some rubbish like that.
It was a Rambo rip-off. I tell you what, I think you enjoyed it more than I did. Let's leave it there.
Let's leave it that. Yeah. We got Cuckoo. Remember that one? A little horror film.
Yeah, like that. That was Neon.
That was Neon. A great
Hunter Schafer going crazy in Austria.
That was it. Went on a bit long for me.
Yeah.
But, and there was Twisters as well, of course, which was, whatever.
Yeah, it was a bit, not terrible, but definitely not worth watching.
And it was a big time of year for Halloween this year, which we covered just last month. We had Salem's Lot.
Brilliant. Some people hated it. I loved it. It was really good.
I thought it was fun. We had Apartment 7A, which was the prequel to Rosemary's Baby.
That was good.
Which was solid enough. Unnecessary and a bit samey, but it was fun enough.
True. True that.
There was The First Omen, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, it was good.
Really surprised me. And then Beetlejuice, of course, came out.
Which was fun.
Not
thrilling, but nice.
Yes, but it's been an action-packed year, and you can check all them out on our previous podcast from this year. We'll put some links in the description. But we've still got a few more films left to cover.
That's right. Yeah. So, shall we get on with it?
Let's do it.
Let's get on with it right now. Okay, so the first film on our list for the 2024 wrap is Gladiator II, which we went to see very recently. Ridley Scott, of course, a sequel to his 2000 epic Gladiator, which won Oscars and is beloved and still quoted and, are you not entertained? Fantastic film. So he's decided in his infinite wisdom, 24 years later, to produce a sequel. We have Paul Mescal in the lead role. He's basically the son of Maximus, who was played by Russell Crowe in the original. Even though there's a bit of mystery to that and there's a little bit of fart-arsing around to see how that transpired. But I think he's supposed to be the kid from the first one. Yeah. All grown up and fucked up and not knowing what he's doing, but somehow inheriting the traits of his father, like picking up dirt and rubbing it in your hands, and also talking a bit like this. Even though I'm an Irishman, I'm going to talk like Russell Crowe did in the first movie. Okay, whatever. Pedro Pascal, always loved to see him. And Denzel was the Oscar winner of the movie.
I want to thank the Academy.
Yeah, the one thing we'd say at the moment is Ridley just like desperate for cash when he comes to these kind of things? Just like, is his pension run out?
I think he's addicted to work. You can't stop.
This was great fun. Don't get anything wrong about it. It's good, violent, blockbuster film, lots of action. I watched it on IMAX. It looked pretty. It was, exactly what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And the people going around going, oh, Gladiator was such a special film, and this kind of solids it is like, Gladiator was never that special. Gladiator is a great film. Mm-hmm. It's, again, another blockbuster, a Ridley blockbuster, watch on the big screen, great. Loads of quotable lines, great action. But it's not fucking Citizen Kane. It's just a Swords and Sandals movie. Chill out.
It's not Coriolanus, darling.
No, exactly, right? So, fine. But the one issue I have of this film is you watch Gladiator and it still looks amazing now because of the physicality, the presentation. Everything was done for real and, it all looks great. What hurts this is the CGI and, in particular, shit CGI. I mean, some of the animals, what were they, wolves or dogs or something in the opening?
I believe they were baboons.
Baboons, that was it, sorry. In the opening kind of gladiatorial
They did look
contest.
A little bit canine, I'll give you that.
Well, they looked like something from Pixar. It was ridiculous. And quite a few of the animals looked ridiculous. Yeah. I don't even know why they focused on using animals, to be honest. It was a bit silly. But
well, the rhino was cool. The guy on the rhino was kind of like fitted the idea of Rome. You could imagine somewhere that they brought this poor thing all the way up from Africa and, it makes its debut in the bloody arena with this guy astride it. Okay, I'll buy that. But sharks?
A what?
Let's just have a think about that. How did they get them sharks in the arena?
Well, I don't see how it's possible, right? Because it's like you couldn't make glass tanks.
I think they made a massive big slide that came out of the Mediterranean somewhere there, and they just sort of like splooshed them down it. How they got the sharks to the top of the slide, that's another podcast.
It got to that part of the film with sharks in the arena, and I went, this is getting a bit silly now. But so the biggest thing that hurts this was, again, the CGI. Even just the opening sequence, the boats were not great.
Yeah.
Some of the compositing in the background and stuff was all a bit like, you've cheaped out here, and it hurts it.
Rushed again, maybe rushed.
Rushed. The worst is also the blood. So they decided to use digital blood, which looked straight out of a After Effects CGI pack that I've used before, instead of using real blood packs on set, and it looked crap.
Right. You could tell it was digital blood.
Digital blood. It looked, and you just think, you've got a lot of money to make this film. You can do better.
You know what, though? I can forgive all that stuff. I don't tend to notice how bad the CGI is as much as you do. You got a keener eye for that stuff than I have. I tend to be like, oh, really? Was it that bad? You know what's more terrible for me? The awful acting of those two dudes playing the Emperors. It was like something out of...
I
thought it was like out of a Batman episode, the 60s Batman. They would have... Oh, no, not the Emperors.
It reminded me of like Horrible Histories from CBBC. I thought they were like out of that. I thought it was great.
Exactly. They shouldn't, Joaquin Phoenix was so good in that first one. His character arc, the way he went from, trying to please daddy to evil emperor was like this whole thing. It was like great. These two are just a couple of pricks.
The gods have spoken!
They were totally hateable, and that's why I liked them, because they were totally hateable and so silly. The only thing it was missing was like it needed someone who was like controlling them a bit more.
I just thought they weren't scary. They were supposed to be like psychopathic, and I wasn't really scared of either of them. That one with the monkey, and just like, I was just thinking, nah. But there we go. From baboons to baboons.
From baboons to baboons. Apart from that, cast was great.
Denzel
Story
was great.
That's
what I'll say. Denzel was great.
Yeah.
He played that kind of evil.
Machiavellian.
Sort of like puppet master. Mescal, jury's out for me. I know he's all cool with the kids and everything, but I haven't seen him in anything else yet except this. And I thought it was a little bit too Maximus.
Well, the only thing with that was, the
never go full
voice,
Maximus. Never go full Maximus.
The Maximus voice was very weird, but it was so inconsistent for me. Was the thing? It was like one scene it'd be normal, and then next he's doing it, and you're like, But in other stuff he's done, he's been great. So
I'm only joking. I mean, I'm not ribbing the guy. He did a fine job, but there was things like that I was just risible. I thought
Pedro was fantastic.
Pedro's ace. Pedro's always ace, and he's yet to disappoint us.
Yeah.
But, like you said, everyone complaining about it. It's not like Shakespeare anyway. So, why not do 2, 3, 4, pass it over to like younger, more inexperienced directors for the next couple of installments. Just go straight to DVD, if that's still a thing. Probably not.
Straight to streaming. 6.
Yeah, why not? Dolph Lundgren can turn up in one. I buy it. Okay, next movie on our list is, this now. Don't give me Rebel Ridge when there's movies like The Substance out there this year. Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid.
But,
had a horrible... That's the only reason I could put up with him in this film is because he was true to life, so disgusting a person.
I have to give people what they want. That's what keeps the shareholders happy.
But this was one hell of a film, directed by Coralie Forget. Blew my mind. Very much sort of like Cronenberg-esque, the whole body dysmorphia thing, body horror. Demi Moore, for me, giving the performance of a lifetime, even though she's been going so long. Loved her years ago. Grew up with her, really, when she was in everything and she was like on top. And now she comes back with something like this and it's like, this is how talented this woman is. She's fucking acing it in her early 60s, in a movie that's right up there. This is like, I think it ticks a lot of boxes. It's a big sort of like theatre filler. It's got box office power, but it's also got a massive message, got something to say, got great performances, very original, like a Black Mirror episode, but, Hollywood budget. I loved it. I thought it was like, blew my mind. And I don't always go for things like this, I mean, can you even say that? Because it's quite original. Are there things like this? But you know what I mean. I'm not a massive Cronenberg guy, but really, this was like, I thought it was so spot on. Such a great film.
It was, and it's interesting. I think there is films like this. There is body horror and films that go in this direction. For example, I thought the end sequence, like the last 20 minutes, reminded me of Men, which we covered last year or the year before.
I don't know if we did cover it. Did we cover it? Did we cover Men? I think we just reacted to a trailer for it. We never actually talked about it afterwards. We did personally, but not on the pod. But I agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's basically, and I don't know what to make of the ending, if I'm honest. It almost leapt into Little Shop of Horrors territory, slightly.
Substance now.
The Substance,
okay.
Yeah.
I was just checking we weren't still talking about Men, but yeah, okay. Little Shop of Horrors, love it.
But powerful, what it's talking about. I thought the whole arc of the film was very interesting. It's very clever. It's got a lot to say about, desire of women or the imposition from above of women to look better and
beauty
younger
standards,
and fitter,
yeah,
and all of that, especially in Hollywood and all these different things. Obviously, Dennis Quaid and all his cronies in it are very much the representation of, and they're leering at them and all disgusting.
Yeah.
So and that's really interesting. Obviously, the kind of outlet of the whole thing is it's a drug that they take. It creates two versions of themselves, and but they must swap every week as a whole mechanism. And you got this conflict between the original older woman, the Demi Moore, and the younger one, and about who wants to still exist, kind of thing.
Even though they're consistently told you are one, you are both one.
You are one, yes. Yeah. It's a very symbiotic, organic relationship between the two, right? They rely on
this is the deeper meaning of the film, is the duality, and how that we always feel 18, even though we grow old and we get to you're 60, but how many times do you hear people say it? I'm still 18 in my head, and this is basically talking about that as well. This idea of still wanting to always be young, youth worship, the youthful us inside the old us, that, when you look in the mirror, that great scene where she just can't go out because she's dissatisfied with her makeup or her clothes, or she keeps coming back and back and back. And it's like, that for me was the key scene in the movie, because it was like, this is really what we're getting at here.
Exactly. That is like the sentient being at the heart of the movie, isn't it? Of like, this is what it's about. It didn't even need everything else to say it, but everything else adds layers on top.
Many things, yeah.
But it was great, and I thought it was an assault on the senses at times. Especially there's some very violent sequences in the flat and stuff, which are like, fucking hell, this is brutal. This is really, but it was very necessary. I felt it was a real kind of hitting you as it needed to.
It wasn't gratuitous. It was definitely part of the whole narrative, but that's beating up on yourself, literally beating up on yourself. It was deep, man. It was a deep film, a feminist film, a brave film, and also, just on that base level can apply to, appeal to horror fans and people who just like a bloody good, what the was that sort of movie,
Yeah.
Okay, sticking with the whole idea of appearance and beauty standards, we're going to talk now about A Different Man, which stars Sebastian Stan, Renate Reinsve. She was in The Worst Person in the World. That's the only other thing I've seen her in. She too in this plays the worst person in the world, but we'll get to that. And it's also got Adam Pearson in, British actor. So the IMDb just says, an aspiring actor undergoes a radical medical procedure to transform his appearance, but his dream new face soon turns into a nightmare. Nice. That's a nice little synopsis for it there, because it doesn't really give too much away, but it's kind of sums the whole thing up. So the idea with this, I suppose, that Sebastian Stan has got a condition where his face it's almost like elephantitis, isn't it, or something? It's like
neurofibromatosis.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Obviously, he's that's his life, that's who he is, and then he, as it says, he goes under some transformative tests with this drug, and he basically peels it all off, and he's Sebastian Stan underneath. And then at first he gets everything he wants. He gets women, he gets popularity, he gets to be pleasing to look at. But then, as it says, that kind of turns on itself a bit when this other guy turns up who has got exactly the same condition. The actor in real life, Adam Pearson, has got that condition. So, there's a big element there to it. But once he turns up, things start to turn around a bit. Plus, there's Renee Reinsve. She's a playwright, and she's his neighbour at first. She's stuck in the middle of it all, twisting the knife in. And this was another one. It's got a hell of a lot to say, especially about appearance and perceptions that we all have of one another and our appearances, whatever they may be. This one reminded me, remember Beau is Afraid? I think we talked about that either late last year or the beginning of this year. I think it was late last year. For me, this had vibes of that, but it was like less, it was more subtle. It wasn't like Beau is Afraid was really extravagant, almost indulgent in its portrayal of Beau's world and what happened to him. It was always like hyper realistic, whereas this one was just quite realistic, very realistic, done in a way that is almost documentary style. Hilarious, lots of funny stuff in there as well. A black comedy, I would say, more than anything else. There were moments I burst out laughing, but also got a very serious point.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, this is another one of them films that's come out. We've had The Substance, and it's another example of two films with very similar themes coming out at the same time. It's very much a companion piece, I think, to The Substance. Yeah.
Make a good double feature, as they say.
Yeah, and especially how this is, it is about, neurofibromatosis, a real condition, but it's also, this is from a male perspective, right?
Sure.
So there's a whole other treasure trove of things to start to dig into and unfurl about the same thing, about how we look, desire to fit in, vanity issues, etc., and also stuff about being socially accepted and love and romance and all these different things.
Right? Loads of things in there, loads.
I think I have to call out Adam Pearson, who actually has the condition in real life, which I've seen a documentary about on BBC. At some point where they talk about it. I think he's amazing in this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was just giggling there, but it wasn't because of the condition, it's because he was so funny in it.
Oh, he's so funny. I love, and that's how he kind of is. He's so lively.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing, that it's not like held to this stigmatization of it. It's like, it's very
he
positive.
Subverts expectations in the sense that he's like, I'm the life and soul of the party. I've always got something nice and witty to say. I'll surprise you with things I come out with. I'm really engaging, and it's like, wow, this guy's.
And you do an American accent.
I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
Adrian! I am not a crook.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's great.
The big dick in the room.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Edward Guy, played by Sebastian Stan, who is the guy who has the condition, then the drugs remove it away. It's a very interesting performance. It actually reminded me of American Psycho and Patrick Bateman from Christian Bale. Now, because you're watching the film, you're very sympathetic towards him as things unfold and stuff like that. But then looking back after watching the film, I can only think that he's a complete psychopath, a complete sociopath.
Yeah.
Because when you start looking back at things he does, you go, what the fuck? This is just fucked up.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to start unpicking what has happened, and the neighbour who ends up writing the play and all this is just as fucking weird.
Yeah. Horrible person.
With strange obsessions. And
I think they
kinks.
all end up like that, though, because even Oswald, played by Adam Pearson, he, when they're saying at the end they're going to that cult and everything, he's just as much of a self-indulgent egotist as anyone, and it's kind of like, you don't know who to really side with, because you know that shot where he's in the cast and he's just sat there at the table, you know, when it cuts to all of a sudden after they've had that accident on stage, I just burst out laughing. Yeah. That was where I really thought, yeah, this is just a really funny, dark comedy. But Beau Was Afraid was like that as well. I had a lot of serious, crazy stuff in it, but it was also hilarious.
It was, and I think a terrific double feature. I think I agree.
Brilliant.
What's the Substance and What's a Different Man, and it's great. A great double, really.
Yeah, totally. Isn't it funny how these films come out and they just have these similar themes? And we've talked about this before as well, but I totally agree. Great double feature. Both thumbs up. Get on with your body horror and dysmorphia. Okay, sticking with Sebastian Stan, we also watched this year quite recently The Apprentice, which is basically about Donald Trump's early years, him meeting the guy called Roy Cohn, who was responsible for teaching him things like, you know, fuck everybody over, never apologize, never admit defeat, all of those great Trumpian sort of tropes that he's now famous for. So this is examining him as a kind of meek nobody who becomes the everybody that we know. I won't say in love today. And really good character study, great acting, again, done quite realistically, like The Apprentice show in a way. I found some of it was a bit, you know, that kind of over the shoulder, moving around with the camera stuff going on. I might just be imagining it, but that's what it felt like. Like this, you're part of the gang, you're a fly on the wall, you're looking over the shoulder, you're eavesdropping on their conversations and stuff. So quite revealing, or certainly a warts and all look at Donald Trump, which we expected, I think, from it. It was never going to be some sort of puff piece where they're celebrating him. I thought Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn was amazing. Really, really good performance. Really enjoyed that element of it. Sebastian Stan, again, proving his worth beyond the Marvel universe. With another great performance here as Donald Trump. He didn't go too Trump. He never went full Trump. You know, he kept it he didn't do the voice, which is good because it would have been a bit Alec Baldwin if he did. But he still sort of had the mild mannerisms and the kind of little idiosyncrasies of Trump. I thought it was quite a convincing portrayal. What did you think, son?
I thought it's the greatest movie of all time about me, Donald Trump, not in China.
You're more like Don Jr.
Don Jr. No, it was great. You're right. The biggest factor of this film being a success is that it wasn't a caricature. It was a really fleshed performance. It was a character study rather than I'm going to do an impression. It was just what it needed to be. So Sebastian Stan was fantastic in his role, and I agree. Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn is a marvel. He makes the movie, and what a twat he is. But also one that realizes what a monster he's created by the end of it.
You almost feel sorry for him a bit at the end.
You do feel sorry for him, and you think, geez, he's worse than he ever was.
Yeah. Like you said, he's a monster he's created. Frankenstein.
Exactly. It's great to watch because it is that kind of unfurling of a man who starts at the beginning of the film. He's a pussy at the beginning, like getting pushed around by his tenants when he's collecting the rent. He's a little wimp when he's talking to Roy Cohn at the beginning. He's all like, "Oh, I'm here to see you, sir," you know, and all this. And by the end of the 80s, he's the Donald Trump we know today. He's an absolute prick to everyone, not paying people. You know, he explores all those things that we know. And it's interesting, I guess, because I think a lot of people, especially younger people now, don't know this history of what we know, and people who are older know of Donald Trump in the 80s and where he came from, and that he was by the end of the 80s and the early 90s, he was a joke, right? You know, everything he had went bankrupt and all this kind of stuff. But to see that evolution of who he was, very different from the Donald Trump of today.
So again, we've got another film here which is about metamorphosis, a change from pussy to prick by the start to the end. But instead of it being a physiological transformation, this one is completely internal.
Yes, that's it. And that was and that was a funny scene when he's all talking about, he's talking to his doctor. I don't believe in exercise. It runs out the body. And
like the body's a battery.
It's like, oh my God, this guy.
But look at him, he's still going.
If
that is indeed his attitude, even though he eats McDonald's every day, I keep thinking, how is this guy still going? Because with Joe Biden, you think, okay, he's very old, he's ancient, he's almost like Egyptian, but he rides his bike, he does little jogging by the French doors of the White House. And remember him and Obama used to do a little jog. And you think, well, he's kept himself well. He probably plays tennis, never smoked, doesn't drink much, so he's doing all right there. But Trump, like you said, he's quite a large bloke, and he's just eating McDonald's all the time.
I think they lace it with cocaine or something every day. That's what keeps him going. But it's an interesting film. I think it's really well done. It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to point out, they tried to stop this movie being released.
The Trump campaign.
Camps and stuff. They tried to sue the directors. They tried to stop it being released. But it did come out in the end. And the quote from the director, Ali Abbasi, was, realistic movies need to be produced about the threat of fascism.
There we go. That says it all. Because really, that's what we're dealing with. We both saw it before the election. And to be honest with you, we were probably... well, me more than you anyway, we're in that deluded state, was no way he's going to win. Of course it's going to be Harris, Trump's finished. We're going to see films like this come out about him, exposing what a rapist, horrible, morally bankrupt as well as literally bankrupt person he is. And no, he's back. We might have a sequel.
What if you lost your fortune today?
Well, then maybe I'll run for president. I don't know.
But damn good film. Well done, Sebastian Stan. Very well done, Jeremy Strong. I wouldn't say it was a top 5 film for me, but it was probably a top 10 film.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was a very good film in the top end of the table, but not in the top for me.
Definitely not. Okay, so the next film on the list was a Netflix production. It is A Woman of the Hour. It stars and was directed by Anna Kendrick, the great Anna Kendrick. Didn't really have anyone else in it that was like super famous and notable that I know of or I'd seen before. Good enough cast. But this is like based in the 70s about a young girl that goes on like a blind date show, isn't it? It's Blind Date, really. She's trying to be an actress. She can't really get any parts for one reason or another. She's almost thinking of going back to Nebraska or Kansas, wherever she's from, that old shtick. But she gets the chance to go on this blind date thing. But one of the contestants on it basically is a psycho killer. And through a series of flashbacks, while the show's sort of going on, we see what he's been up to. And as you said to me, he's kind of a little bit like that guy out of No Country for Old Men, Anton Chigurh. He's got that vibe anyway, that creepy vibe going. Maybe not as extreme as that, more realistic than that. But so, it's building the tension the whole time. Like, is she going to pick him? If so, do they go on a date? What's going to happen to her because he's been doing all this serial killer stuff in between? That's the premise, but it's based on a true story. It actually happened in real life. This guy was so charming, like, the old adage of serial killers. They're charming. They charm you into their clutches, sort of, what was his name? Ted Bundy style. This was one of those guys. So it kind of works on that level of builds the tension of, oh shit, what's going to happen to her? But also like, oh, it was based on a true story. And also, apparently, Anna Kendrick gave all the profits to victims charity, which I thought was a good thing to do because it could possibly point the finger of exploitation at them otherwise. But, important story to tell. She did a very good job, I thought, in the direction. It was pretty great. And, over to you. Any of your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. I think, it's very interesting, obviously, this dating game episode, which you say it's a bit like Blind Date across here.
Yeah.
I thought Daniel Zavato, who played Rodney Alcala as the serial killer's name, was just fantastic. As you say, we both said, No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem, that character, it's what he felt like, and as you say, in a more realistic way. But it gave that vibe, and it was very unnerving. And there's some really gripping sequences in this, which really unnerve you. To get underneath your skin, you're like, oh, this is
scary,
gross, and scary. Yeah. I love the fact it's told out of sequence. The character stories done in these flashbacks and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because it keeps the ending a surprise. You can't quite tell where it's going because the way they're pulling at all these threads.
Yeah.
But each one is a compelling story. And it is very disturbing, very well produced film. Everything about it's just great. It's very tight. There's nothing wasted in here.
No.
The script is really well done. I'd never heard of the guy before, Ronnie Alcala, and so reading up about him afterwards, I mean, it just sounds horrific. He did hundreds, they reckon, he could have killed in the end, including young boys and young girls and stuff like this. It's really disturbing. And so yeah, it's I think it's good to tell these kind of stories.
Norm Macdonald would say, "This guy was a real prick."
Exactly. Real bastard.
Yeah, he was. And I mean, the scariest thing about him is he's so convincing that he's a nice guy to a lot of people. You even see that where he's...
But they are these kind of characters, aren't they? As you say, Ted Bundy and all these different ones over the years. A lot of them are just such charming individuals. They
seems to be
people. I think it's a natural characteristic if you watch some of these shows where they kind of analyse these kind of things. It's a natural characteristic of them that they need to be able to convince people to do things that they wouldn't do, or trust them, or these things.
Yeah.
So a natural attribute, especially because a lot of these ones tend to be very high IQ individuals, right?
Right.
I think a part of them is they can manipulate people. They can be charming. They know how to pick the buttons.
Know what to say to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, very well done. Great little film to watch. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. You can check it out. It's a Netflix production, so it'll always be on there. As I say, I thought she did a great job. So definitely a thumbs up from me and from you. We'll just have a quick break now for a word from our sponsor, funkytshirts.co.uk. More Movies Podcast is sponsored by funkytshirts.co.uk, a t-shirt design brand shipping internationally. Check out their extensive and ever-increasing catalogue of cool t-shirt designs that includes collections such as film and TV, retro comics, funny designs, and spooky t-shirts. All products are produced and shipped from locations as close as possible to the buyer's address to avoid extensive and unnecessary shipping costs, and all t-shirts are made in an environmentally friendly process. Keep it funky and order your t-shirts today. Okay, Ringo, peace and love, man. The next film we're going to talk about is Midas Man. This was directed by Joe Stevenson. Stars Jacob Fortune Lloyd, Emily Watson, Ed Spiliers, whoever he is. Eddie Izzard was in one scene, I think, as a little cameo. Jay Leno's in there as Ed Sullivan. What a strange choice.
It was.
Eddie Marsan as his dad, Harry Epstein. So this is the Brian Epstein story. Brian Epstein, of course, being most famous for being the Beatles manager, but he obviously had a bit of a stable of stars from all those Liverpool acts that came in the wake of the Beatles. So Cilla Black obviously features quite heavily here. Jerry and the Pacemakers, Mersey Beats, all of those, they were all Epstein stars. But of course, the Beatles were the main pull. So what we've got here is another Beatles movie that's like, a dramatization of events that happened. We've got the Beatles in there. It is about Brian, though. It's about him just before he met them, working in his parents' furniture store, then having his own record store, Nems Records, which was a famous records shop in Liverpool. He got accused of buying all the Beatles singles on there. Love Me Do, and that's why it got him into the charts. But hey, if he did do it, it worked, didn't it? He's not he's not stupid. So obviously Midas Man, everything he touches turns to gold. So really the heart of this story is about him succeeding in the face of he's got like a father who's a little bit overbearing, and you should just do this, say, family business or be a doctor or something, and not be, a queer person that's dreaming of, superstardom by making these young lads famous. Basically, that's the thread of the story. But I thought it was great. I'm a Beatles fan. You're a Beatles fan. Didn't really like the Beatles in it. I thought John Lennon was terrible. I've seen some bad John Lennons in my time, but remember that one, The Birth of the Beatles? We used to laugh about it because John Lennon's supposed to be 17 and he's about 40.
Hey. Where are we going, fellas? To the top. What top? To the very top.
He would have been better in this than that little twerp. I didn't like him at all. The McCartney was good. The Pete Best was good. We get to see Pete Best getting sacked. That's kind of a key scene in there. But, the rest of the Beatles I thought were a little bit subpar. I hope they do a better job with the Sam Mendes thing.
This was great. I think Jacob Fortune Lloyd was great as Brian. Played it really well. I thought the handling of like the traditional Jewish family was great. That kind of aspect of it. The stuff around his homosexuality was handled brilliantly. The kind of threats he gets and the blackmailing and stuff like this, and his kind of reaction to it. I thought it was really cleverly handled without like being truthful to it without being offensive. I thought they did a great job of that. I'd say the Beatles were crap in it, really, the actors. But
George Martin was brilliant, though.
I think there's some promise.
Some promise? Don't overdo it.
Heavens, I think I might faint.
George Martin was excellent, and so was Cilla Black, I thought.
Yeah, Cilla Black was great as well. She was really good.
But, because it wasn't about the Beatles primarily, you get away with it. All right, we know who they are, they're the Beatles, and we know who each character plays. They're not convincing, but it does the job.
It does.
Because the story's less about them, it's about Brian. But some of those scenes that play out, as you say, the first audition where they meet George Martin, the sacking of Pete Best, all these key moments which you've heard about are really well constructed here.
Yeah.
There's some, so those iconic scenes. It's really great fun little film,
especially for Beatles fans. I like the way it ended as well. I mean, obviously he had an overdose, and people say some say suicide, some say it was accidental suicide. He wouldn't have meant to do it. He was just on some heavy meds and whatever. You do see him getting a bit fond of the necking back the whiskies and taking these pills, so they infer it. But they didn't end on that. They didn't end on a bummer. They ended with the recording of the live broadcast of All You Need Is Love, because it was probably the last big thing that the Beatles did before he died. Because they buggered off to Bangor then, didn't they, with Maharishi, and that's where it was the same time. But I'm glad they didn't end on that. They ended on the message, that ultimate message of the Beatles, All You Need Is Love. What a nicer way to end things of Brian's story than that.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a very depressing way to end such a thing by going, we're going to show you him topping himself. I mean, it's a bit like... Yeah, great. It's not what's in you want to see.
I don't think you needed to see that. It was about his life, not his death. But
it was enough at the end to just write it on screen, wasn't it?
Definitely. I like the way it finished.
Ringo?
They enjoyed playing with him when you were unwell.
I was sick, Brian. I was sick, not dead.
So there we go. Midas Man, definitely a thumbs up from me. Major Beatles fan. Probably a thumbs up from Dave, also a major Beatles fan. Brian Epstein famously quoted from Paul McCartney as, if anyone was the fifth Beatle, it was Brian, which reminds me to tell you we did a video earlier this year, who were the fifth Beatles, which obviously Brian's in there, amongst others. So if you want to know who else was on our list of mythical fifth Beatles, I'll put a link in the description. You can check that out. On to the next.
Mal Evans, of course.
Mal's in there. He's in the honourable mentions. We're sticking with the Beatles now for Beatles 64, yet another Beatles documentary. We've had a lot in the last few years. Obviously, Disney are really cashing in on owning the Beatles and all their stuff at the moment by producing all these. But now we've got Martin Scorsese with Beatles 64. I mean, when I say Scorsese, he produced it. He doesn't direct it. It's someone called David Tedeschi who directs it. But Scorsese is the big cheese behind it all. He's talking to Ringo in there. He's got some screen time and whatnot. He's obviously got a vested interest in doing this. We do get a little bit of modern Paul and Ringo talking about a few bits in there, but it mainly relies on old footage that has again been cleaned up and unearthed, and some of it we've never seen before, about seeing the Beatles go to America for the first time in hotel rooms, basically high on the fact that they're in America, which was a big thing for them. We also have some great concert performances that have been cleaned up. The Ed Sullivan performances are in there, or at least one or two of them. So we get to see some of that again, which is really nice. And yes, again, yet another Beatles documentary. Again, great for fans of the Beatles like us. We love it. We lap it up. Maybe a bit of an eye roller for people who are indifferent or dislike them. But, they don't have to watch it, do they? It's made for people like us, really. So good for the new fans, good for the mid fans, the vanilla guys like us, and good for the oldies that loved them the first time round.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was a passable documentary.
Passable? As in passable, it's passable.
It's passable, it's passable. It's, they've done a great job of cleaning this up, and the highlights are like the footage of the concerts, and you can actually hear them, and it's, that they were like the highlights of the whole thing, really. The documentary as a whole kind of dragged. I had to watch it in 3 bits.
Okay, it was quite long. It was 2 hours.
It's 2 hours, and it kind of drags a bit because there's no real narrative. That the footage is telling the narrative. It's a very kind of let the footage do the talking kind of thing. It's not like there's not a narrator or anything like that. So you're letting that happen, but within that, there's a lot of repetitiveness, right? Which is what the Beatles had. They were just like, here's another hotel room, and you're going to hang out here for hours on end. Well, they had to go through that, and now we have to go through that. It's like, here we are in another city, and we're sitting in a hotel room doing the same thing, talking to radio hosts on the phone, and some fans are trying to climb up the stairwell again. And once you've seen that twice, it starts to get a bit like, yeah, we get the picture. So there's some funny moments in there which are really great from the boys. There's a lot of recycled footage, though. If you've watched a lot of Beatles documentaries and videos over the years, there's a lot in here which you'll have seen. It'll look better than ever. It's been cleaned up, as you say. There is some unique footage that is new, but not, probably 10, 15 minutes maybe altogether. Some of the interviews were interesting when they're talking to Ringo and talking to Paul and talking to a couple of people. Some of the people I was like, hey, why are you talking to this guy?
Yeah, but you're being a bit unfair now because some of them were great. You had Smokey Robinson in there. You had Ronnie Spector. I thought Jack Douglas talking about absconding to Liverpool and getting done by the immigration people was a great little story because obviously he ended up working with John Lennon towards the end of his life, producing his albums and stuff. So it's got some stuff about it, I think, via those interviews that it makes it more entertaining than you're giving it credit for.
I just felt it was very okay. I mean, to me, it's good to repackage this stuff up as here's a way of telling this story again for people who don't know. So for a new audience, it might be a new way in through here's Disney going to start giving Beatles 64 and then maybe we do Beatles 65 and Beatles 60, and it's like, here's a, so, but if you've seen a lot of the other documentaries, to me, it was like, oh, yeah, I know this and we've been through this territory before. So it gets a bit kind of like, yeah, okay. So, it was fine enough, but, it's, we just had Get Back, which was amazing. And this isn't that, and it's just a bit like, okay.
I think, that's fair enough because I think 8 days a week was more exciting as well.
Yes,
the Ron Howard one, but anyway, I still enjoyed this. I can see what you're saying. I think maybe yes, it is maybe gateway stuff for younger generations to get into it. And as I said, Disney cashing in on what can we cut up next for the Beatles to put something back together again and sell another, documentary. Again, they've got Scorsese's clout behind this, so
You guys sort of like New York, coming into New York, you like all the old noir films?
No, mainly for the music.
Okay.
I felt an octopus. I'm full of octopuses.
Yes.
Grabbing the plane and bringing me down.
Okay.
We'll leave it there. And we'll come back to it, Beatles 65, like you say, if they do that. All right, next film on our list is Juror number 2. Clint Eastwood's latest piece. Every time Clint Eastwood brings a film out these days, we think, oh, this is going to be his last, but then he does another one. So maybe it's going to be his last, but possibly not. I mean, he is getting old now, bless him, but he's still producing good films, as this one shows. The last one of his we watched was Cry Macho, which he was in, which we weren't really keen on, to be honest. So I was glad that he wasn't in this one. And being fans of 12 Angry Men and film noir, I thought this was a good fit because it's got, it is basically like 12 Angry Men, but with a sort of mystery noir element to it. So basically, Nicholas Hoult is on a jury, been selected for jury service, and then the case, as it turns out, the trial, he starts to think to himself, actually, I might be guilty of this crime, and they've got the wrong person, but I'm the person who did it. That's the thing, isn't it? That's the whole shtick of it. We saw it in the cinema. It had a limited release, so it was lucky, really. We got to go and see it. It's available now for people to stream in quite a few places. I thought it was good. It was a good, did what it said on the tin. Like I said, 12 Angry Men with a bit of film noir in there, a modern sort of courtroom mystery drama. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great. It was Clint Eastwood doing what he does best, a great drama, sticking to that and not getting involved himself.
No. What he does best is being a cowboy.
Well,
this is not that.
Many years ago, maybe.
Yeah, not in Cry Macho.
No, but in terms of his modern filmmaker's directorial career in the last 20 years, this is the solid stuff that he can come up with.
Yeah, it's good.
Nicholas Hoult, fantastic. I'm a big fan of him anyway. Have been for years, all the way since when he was in Skins all them years ago. But he's great in this. Great, very sympathetic character. It's an interesting story. I did say, as soon as they got into the jury room, I was thinking 12 Angry Men. I thought for a while that we were going to stay in the jury room then for the rest of the film.
Yeah, because there's the whole idea of him trying to convince all the others that the guy's not guilty because he's feeling guilty himself, that he might be guilty of the crime.
But then the question is, do you let him take the question he has and you have as an audience member is, do you let the guy take the blame for this and get away with it, or what you try and do, right? So that's the fantastic conundrum that then sits throughout the film, and all this stuff unfolds. Brilliant. We've got J.K. Simmons is on the jury for a little while. Great little performance.
Yeah.
As always, he's like an ex-cop, isn't he? From a different county. And even Kiefer Sutherland turns up as the main character's AA guidance counsellor because he's an ex-alcoholic. So that's really great. But it's a great little story.
And we got Toni Collette, don't forget, as the prosecutor.
Yes. She's fantastic.
She's the best actor on the cast for me.
But yeah, great little story. Well shot, really well timed. Very satisfied all the way through. It's just really solid.
Yeah.
Little film, really.
I could imagine it being made in the 40s. Change it towards black and white, and put Cary Grant in there or someone like that. And they could have made this film then, and it would have been a good little noir. But as a modern one, Clint's still producing pretty decent quality stuff here. I thought maybe there was some elements about it that was a little bit TV movie. It seemed to be missing a certain cinematic sheen here and there, but that didn't take away anything. That was probably more budget things than anything else.
Probably, because it probably didn't have a great deal of budget, but it does exactly what it needs to on the tin, I think. And the one angle I really loved about it is the commentary about once the police have decided who they're going for, they'll just pursue that angle and pick the evidence that fits it. And they kind of they talk all about that quite extensively. And I liked all that about it. I thought it's a very interesting angle to go in at.
James Scythe didn't attack her, and he couldn't have pushed her because he wasn't there.
Let's move on to our next film, which is Strange Darling. Now, this film was originally released towards the end of 2023, but it didn't get a general release until later on in 2024. I think it was August by the time they found a distributor. And so we were sort of catching up on it by the time it came to streaming, which was about a month or two ago. I thought it was a brand new film then, and in reading about it afterwards, found out because it was like it's 2023, like officially, but really, most people only saw it this year. Absolutely brilliant film, directed by J.T. Molnar, stars Willa Fitzgerald, Kyle Gallner. So I'm almost tempted to not really say anything about this film, because there will be some that have seen it and we could talk about it and it's like, yeah, great. But as it says on the poster, one of the things it says, you must go in blind. So I just read that on the thing. It said, must go in blind. And I thought, okay, let's just put it on and do that. And I'm so glad I did, because it really subverts expectations and twists things on their heads a bit. Again, another film that is told the story's all
out of order,
cut up into bits. It's out of order. Exactly. You're out of order. You're out of order. Right. So interested in that sense, because that really plays in well to the reveal. Yeah. The big reveal. But bloody hell, what I will say is Willa Fitzgerald, what an amazing performance. Really nice, tasty filmmaking as well. Shot on something that seems like Kodak chroma color, almost like a really deep, saturated, rich color palette that's like almost over the top, but really suited it so well, I thought. Very tense, quite basic in a way. Doesn't have to have a lot happen. Like, it's not like a James Bond film that goes all over the world. This is kind of a, truncated story. Bloody hell. I thought this, for me, is almost one of my top films of the year. It might be the top film of the year for me.
Well, it's certainly up there. I think it is a beautiful film. It looks, fantastic. You say it's very saturated, very rich. I like how it's set in Oregon. It's become one of my favourite places recently in games and movies. Oregon seems to be a really great location to set things. It's very rich in colour, with the green forests and the pines and all this. It's very nice. It's ruthless. It's cruel. It's just fantastic. Willa Fitzgerald is tremendous in this. It is a remarkable performance. I think the biggest thing you see, we don't want to spoil it because this is a film that does, you want to go in with not really knowing much, but it's true. It's done out of order. It opens up on like chapter 3 or something, which you're like, okay, this is really different. But it's perfect for the story, because when a film does this right, when it tells out of order to reveal plot points, Pulp Fiction and things like that, and it does it right and it serves the plot, it's fantastic, and it helps keep things a secret. And all I'll say is it totally fooled me.
Got me as well. But that's on reflection one of the great things when you look back on it. That it gets you. You want things to get you. You don't want to guess. You don't want to be right and say, I knew it's going to be that. It's like, bloody hell. So that's all I'm going to say. Just watch this movie. It's brilliant. I can't wait to see it again. Just, going back with a second viewing with that knowledge and being able then to concentrate on some of the other elements you might have missed the first time will be a very interesting exercise. But yes, double thumbs up. Absolutely brilliant. Strange Darling. What great filmmaking. Right, the next film on our list is Saturday Night, directed by Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, which is basically about the first airing of Saturday Night Live, told through the perspective of Lorne Michaels, the guy who's kind of responsible for the show. So you get to see everything that's going on backstage. You get Chevy, you get Belushi, you get Aykroyd, you get Gilda Radner, Jane Curtin, and everyone from the show. All played by, I thought, really well-chosen actors. We were just talking about Midas Man and how disappointed I was in some of the portrayals of the Beatles. Well, this one I thought got it spot on, especially Chevy and Belushi. And anyway, it's all basically takes place over the course of one night when they're just about to broadcast that first episode. There might be one or two flashbacks in there, I can't remember, but basically the tension builds in that, Willem Dafoe is in there as the network executive, the one that has the ability to pull the plug or not. So tension builds there with that. But basically this is one of those behind the scenes things that just, takes poetic license and kind of paints a funny picture of what happened or the chaos that was involved in producing this legendary show. Very funny. Chevy was hilarious.
Sorry, tripped over my penis.
Still in the show, Chev.
Oh, I know.
It was. I say the impersonations they got were the people playing these roles was pretty spot on throughout. Each of the scenes was funny and kind of you noted like, oh yes, this actor for that particular reason, or that's how they are and stuff like this. Chevy was hilarious. He comes across as such an arrogant prick.
Yeah.
And he gets his arse handed to him a few times.
Yeah.
Which is rather funny. Willem Dafoe and J.K. Simmons sharing the screen is pretty special to me. They're both very, very strange people in this. There's a rather disturbing scene with a penis, which is very much a sign of the times.
This is the guy that got me on the penis, people.
So, it's an interesting story. It is funny at times. I thought it could have been funnier. It could have had more laughs. But nonetheless, it's enjoyable and funny, and there's some good drama in there, and the performances are all solid.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to capture, this moment in time, this important landmark, really, of
American
television.
TV,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they did a good job of it all around. I did have a good giggle throughout. I thought it was funny, not just for like the obvious reasons, the Chevys and different bits, but like Willem Dafoe's character, like you said, J.K. Simmons is so eccentric that it was like, wow. Wasn't Philip Seymour Hoffman's son in there as well again? We saw him in Licorice Pizza, which we spoke about a year or so ago. I'm sure he was in there somewhere. Cooper Hoffman, there you go, playing Dick Ebersol. So he was one of the sort of...
That was it, yeah.
Lorne Michaels guys, producers or whatever, working on the show. But it was nice. I just thought it was nice to see him again beyond Licorice Pizza, because I haven't seen him much since then, and it was like... But what
he
about...
has got another film coming out... Another 2 films actually coming out, because I was reading the other day about it. So he has got stuff coming.
Yeah. So you had Andy Kaufman in there as well. Nicholas Braun playing him. The guy from.
Yes.
He was in Succession as well as Greg from Succession.
He was pretty spot on. He was. What's his name? Finn Wolfhard as well was in there, wasn't he? As a little. Boy downstairs on the street. Small role, but it was quite funny.
Andy, this is Billy Crystal, Valerie Bromfield, they're both in the show. Hey. They're both very nice. Please stay with us. Okay?
Andy is a certifiable comedic genius. He's redefining the form. I mean, we are in the presence of greatness.
I thought it was funny. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thumbs up. Bang. Saturday night. Right, next on the list. Here's a divisive film for you. Joker, Folie à Deux. A sequel to Todd Phillips' film from a few years ago with Joaquin Phoenix. Nothing at all like the original film. This one's more of a musical. Really pissed some people off that were expecting to see more of the same, and instead got nothing the same and Lady Gaga in the mix to boot, which I thought was great. Very different film. Again, I mean, it does deal with some of the same themes of, bipolar disorder, this idea of, being quite schizophrenic in a way and having mental health struggles is still tackled in it. It's just tackled in a very different way. Almost get a bit of courtroom drama in there as well. That was the funniest stuff for me, with him defending himself in court, taking on that persona of being almost like a movie lawyer. Thought it was quite hilarious. But very different from the original, eh?
Yeah, it's very, very different from the original. Now, the film isn't as bad as some people have said it was. I mean, some people have really give it like 1 out of 10. But you're lucky if this is 5 out of 10.
Well, the IMDb rating at the moment is 5.2 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's probably generous.
What, the 0.2?
Yeah, it's still a pretty shit film. There's, Lady Gaga's performance is brilliant in it. The court stuff is probably the best stuff, but you only get a very short percentage of the film where he starts to do all that, which is the most interesting part.
Mm.
A lot of the other stuff is superfluous. The musical numbers are very good, actually.
Yeah.
We spoke about this. They're good production value. They're good songs. They're great, well performed, and it is very classical Hollywood. So that aspect is good. But apart from that, the plot of the film is threadbare. And the characters from the beginning, you sit there and you go, nothing has changed.
No,
really, from the opening 2 minutes of this film to the last 2 minutes. It's like, what was the point of this?
Yeah.
And it's not a short film either. So
some people said it was Todd Phillips sticking his thumb out at the audience. Others said he was doing it to the film studios. But I was also reading that Joaquin Phoenix himself was a big sort of impetus behind wanting to do it. Like he was saying he couldn't get out of his head what else could they do with this character beyond what they did in the first film. And the idea of it being a musical and all this, it sounds a little bit strange how this movie came about. Because it feels like at the end, everyone who was involved, apart from Gaga, kind of resented having to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it comes across self-indulgent, and that they've gone in a certain direction, and no one said no to them because the first was so successful. And then they've put it together and then gone, oh, fuck.
Must happen.
And what can they do? It's already been filmed, right? So, it's a bit of a mess.
As a sequel, not really great, but I thought as it's on its own merit, it's quite an interesting film.
It's certainly interesting. It's certainly interesting because it's a very brave direction to go in, and I can only applaud that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of changes you'd have to make to it to fix it. I think it is fixable,
right?
But it's as a whole, it just makes no sense.
No.
From the beginning to end, you go, this is a mess.
Yeah.
But there's blocks of it where you go, oh, that's good, and you could pick them out.
Yeah.
And you could start to try and fix it. But it's.
Remember how excited everyone got where they showed that little clip of her putting the lipstick on the glass, and it comes into line with his smile, and everyone's like, oh, this is going to be so good. That's such a wicked shot. And then it's like, no, you're not going to love this.
Probably the most interesting part of the film was in that courtroom, and it was not long enough.
No.
And that's where the focus should have been around. You should have had almost the whole film be about this court case and disassembling the character.
And a lot more opportunity for comedy in there, because that's one thing I felt it was lacking a bit more sort of levity, a bit of comedy in there, even if that was darker comedy. Didn't tend to have that as much. And it's the Joker, for God's sake. He's supposed to be joking.
Earlier this afternoon, you testified that you saw me stab Mr. Kleiman Minhuff in the neck a couple of times.
Okay, so 2 more films to talk about. The first of which is Conclave, directed by Edward Berger, stars Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, Isabella Rossellini. The IMDb says, when Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. If I just read that, I wouldn't watch this film. If I just read that was my introduction to this film, I wouldn't have watched it, because that to me sounds like boring AF.
Oh, thanks, not for me.
Now, this was, like it is selecting a new pope, but it's kind of a mystery. There's a mystery underneath it all. And Ralph Fiennes is kind of like Columbo, trying to get to the bottom of the mystery in a way, you know what I mean? And he's part of it as well, because he's one of the people that could be voted for pope, but he doesn't want to be pope, or at least we think that. And there's these guys, some of them do, like the ones that really want it, they shouldn't have it because they're not, they're too extreme. And the ones that should have it don't want it because they're too pure. And there's a bit of a reveal at the end, which is kind of like, very topical. Won't give that away here, but it was a bloody good watch. Really nice filmmaking, stunning to look at, really nicely paced. Didn't spoon feed you everything. Left your own imagination to a lot of the stuff that was going on there in the corridors of power in St. Peter's. I really enjoyed it, surprisingly. Couldn't really be arsed with a church movie otherwise, but this was bloody good.
Yeah, I mean, I only finished watching it just before this podcast, a few hours before this podcast, so it's fresh for me.
Nice.
Very interesting. You say production value is amazing. Interestingly, I was reading that the costumes, they deliberately went for the 17th century colour palette of the costumes and stuff, because the modern ones are a bit too boring. And I agree, because the costumes look great and the production values they've gone for. Right. The setting is great in this, I think.
Yeah.
Everything is shot really well. Even the place where they all stay, it's like the hotel of the priests almost. It's like something out of Black Mirror. It's all a bit weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was intrigued to watch it because Ralph Fiennes. I mean, anything Ralph Fiennes is in, I am there for.
Exactly, yeah.
He is the best, but also Stanley Tucci and John Lithgow, amazing as always.
And Isabella Rossellini, always amazing.
And Rossellini. But it's a very intriguing film. As you say, it's paced very nicely, shot very nicely. And every little moment when they zoom in on Ralph Fiennes' face and he's crying or he's inquisitive or whatever, it really resonates something, as you say, it really slowly unfolds these conspiracies and mysteries and many twists and turns, and nothing is as it seems. Ultimately, it's about power and corruption, right? And that quote near the beginning of the film, those who want it the most are exactly the people you don't want to take this position.
Yeah.
And it's like, exactly. And that kind of sums a lot of the feelings up throughout the film, and lots of very interesting stuff going on. It kind of, in the end of the day, reminds you of like any kind of political thriller or anything, or something about the royals or ancient kingdoms. It's the same story again and again, right? It's a power, corruption, conspiracy.
It's Macbeth.
It's Macbeth. It's all those classical tales and Shakespeare. But the one thing I thought was really interesting about this was it all feels very ancient and old religion, right? They're all in their robes and in this old building and everything. But then you've got like a priest on his iPhone or a priest with a vape in his mouth, and it's a little offset of like,
But that tells you everything about the church, doesn't it? That it is an ancient institution, but it's also one that is constantly grappling with modernization, and that has something to, it has something to say about that in this film as well. The idea of the politics behind that. And that whole idea of we're in a war, you must choose a side, very much a political economy of what's been happening in the States in the last 12 months.
This is a conclave, Aldo. It's not a war.
It is a war, and you have to commit to a side.
And the ending as well is brilliant, and we won't spoil it, but it's a very...
it was a brave ending.
Very brave and very interesting ending, I enjoyed it. I thought, yes, I'm up for this.
Yeah, me too. It was a good film. I definitely recommend it. Even if you totally balk at the idea of watching a bunch of Catholics select their next Elvis, then, forget all that. This is a damn fine film. Forget the dressage. This is one you got to see, isn't it? Not as good as The Pope Must Die with Robbie Coltrane, but certainly a good Pope movie. Better than The Two Popes. All right, we finally got there. We're talking about the last movie on this podcast. As you just said about Conclave, you watched it just hours before we recorded. Well, this is what happened to me with I Saw the TV Glow. I watched it a couple of hours ago on your recommendation, so it could be the last movie we talk about today. Folie, this one. Now, you really left the best to the last here. A24 again. I did see the poster for this a while back. Kind of uninspiring, sort of just a silhouette of somebody watching telly with this sort of pink glow. And I thought, okay. Oh, it's a horror or something. And I just didn't know what to make of it. You said to me, like we talked about a few minutes ago with Strange Darling, go in blind. Don't read anything about it. Don't try and get any background on it. Just go in and see what you think of it. So the first hour, I was really, really into it. I was like, looks beautiful. It's very A24. It's got a really nice vibe to it, like a boutique indie kind of vibe. It's like, yeah. The story of the young lad and gets to know the girl. They bond over this TV show. So I was getting Twin Peaks vibes. There's this show I used to watch growing up called Erie, Indiana in the 90s, which was, again, like the show in this film, it was a kids thing, but older kids, and it had very much that kind of weirdness about it. It was a very strange town where anything could happen and usually did. So it had a bit of that about it. And like I say, for the first hour, I was like, this is really cool. Where's this going to go? The second hour, everything breaks down. Everything, and I don't mean that as in the film fails and breaks down. I mean, everything that's been going on breaks down to a level of everything changes in a way. And it's like, oh, this is more sort of the pacing changes. It gets very weird. And you start to, it's less obvious of what's going on. And it's like these sort of long scenes of people just talking about stuff or explaining something or how they felt or the past or what's been happening. And you kind of go, well, all right, but what the hell is, what am I supposed to believe here? With, there's no definite, it's this or that. It's kind of like left to your own devices to kind of figure out what's going on. And then by the end, it really does leave you with a, what the fuck have I just watched feeling? So that's where I came out of it, and I was like, what the hell was that getting at? What was that? What were we talking about here? Again, going back to what we've just talked about with the substance and A Different Man, there may be some elements here that we can draw parallels with in the idea of cutting yourself open and what's on the inside, the representation of that. So I obviously did go away afterwards and do a bit of reading about it because I was so sort of thrown by it all. I thought, what is this? Obviously, you know this now as well, but this is basically an allegory of being transgender and what it means to, obviously, the filmmaker, Jane Schoenbrunn. She said this is part of a trilogy. There's a film before this and there's one still to come that's going to be thematically a trilogy, not directly, of course. So I thought, okay, there's a whole world here I know nothing about or understand very well. And this, in a way, is a sort of like window opening on that topic. So very, very interesting in that sense. I did love this film. I thought it was so challenging and so sort of surreal and different that it just can't be ignored. Again, I think it's a divisive film. Some people hated it, but I can guess the kind of people that hated it. But people who loved Twin Peaks or David Lynch or that kind of cinema where, oh, geez, we're not only talking about this in a postmodernistic sense, we're also recreating these kind of weird scenes and doing very interesting and weird things with basically to portray people's psyche, people's inside feelings, emotions. Very, very interesting. So totally was blown away in the same sort of sense, like with the substance. But I've got to admit, like I say, when I came out of it, I was just like, I don't know what the fuck was going on there. Like we said about Men, the Alex Garland thing. And I got to the end of that and I was like, I just don't know what's going on here. Yeah. It was like that with this, but this I was a little bit more sort of as a film sort of enamoured by because of the way it was done, the visuals. I thought the young guy in it was really good, and the even younger version of him, he was great at the start. She was very good as Maddie. Fred Durst played his dad. Do you remember Fred Durst? Yeah. He was the dad in this. At first I was thinking, is that Billy Corgan? Because it was a very 90s influenced film, and reading about it afterwards, you can see why. Like Sharon Brune was obviously, that was when she was this age, Yeah, I think beyond the transgender allegory, there's also stuff to relate to for anyone in it, because this idea of when you're young, you use art, or in this case, television show, to as a form of escapism, as also as a sense of wonder that the world might be more magical in other ways than you're experiencing, especially if you're going through something traumatic or something that it's like, whatever it be, a broken home or, whatever your issue is, you look for stuff and it's there when you're younger. And as you get older, that kind of fades a bit. You wonder for the world, and this idea of the world being like, in some ways magical, in some ways like this, fantastical place to express yourself in and to be part of, wanes the older you get, because you forget the experiences of, there's the one scene where he watches back the show when he's older, and it's like, oh, it was a lot different than I remember. It was a lot cheesier, and it was falling flat on its face.
Well, I think that's a key aspect of the film, is that it's very soaked in nostalgia. And they say that TV show, very much, I think, like Buffy Vampire Slayer, kind of that type of show. It's alluding to. That
was the major influence on her, apparently. Well, that's what I was reading afterwards. I mean, I didn't get that because I didn't watch Buffy, but that was the main key influence.
And I think it's very key looking at, as you say, that kind of bit where he looks at it when he's older. It's that whole thing of, it's the tinted glasses we have with nostalgia for yesteryear, something that it was better than it was. And, we've all experienced this when we've gone back and looked at someone and then gone, oh, it was shit, actually. In our minds all this time, it's been this. And as you say, because as a child, it's a different thing, right? You have this experience. So it's very interesting. It's very, as you say, it's a really vibrant film. You've got that indie feel to it, but also this kind of neon perspective as well with the TV and stuff that, has these wonderful colour palettes that are playing. Great cast, very distinctive. To me, this is a standout film of the year, A24 again. This is a real special film, because I've not really watched something like this in such a long time, where I've gone, wow, this is really different. Yeah. Because I sat at the end of the film exactly the same, going, well, I enjoyed that, but I have no idea what any of this is supposed to mean.
No. And
then a quick read on my phone, and within a couple of minutes, I went, oh.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all these scenes that I'd watched and not quite understood were locking into place, and I was going, oh, and so that means, and it all came together. And I was really profoundly moved in a way.
Yeah.
Right. And it is quite quite an educational experience, and
definitely,
an enlightening moment of, okay, and so interesting. But the themes that go along with that are so universal as well. It's about escapism. It's about isolation. It's about not fitting in. These are themes that are not just a part of that experience; they're part of many people's experiences as they're younger, and at times in their life. And so, I think they dealt with so many things so well in a really interesting story that does challenge. And as you say, I think there will be people who don't like this. We know who those people are. Fuck them.
Too right.
And, for everyone else, this is a treat to just, challenge yourself and sit and watch something like this. It's a real worthwhile experience, I think.
They can't hurt you if you don't think about them.
But there we go. That's it. That is 2024. What a year for cinema. We've certainly seen some good ones. I mean, obviously, we only talk about a certain amount of films here on the podcast. We do watch a lot more films than the ones that we just talk about. Sometimes Dave watches some I don't see, and vice versa. If you wanted to know exactly what we've been watching in terms of first watches, you can jump onto our Instagram profile, and we put all the first watches in the highlights. Usually say something like December 2024 or whatever. That's the fresh watches we've been watching. You can also join us on Blue Sky now. We're Blue Sky guys rather than Twitter. We've kind of left Twitter, or X as it's become known, and doing all our daily Film Sky shenanigans on Blue Sky now. So I encourage you to come and join us over there. It's got a good vibe, and it's kind of like Twitter used to be in the sense of the vibe, and also in the sense that there's not quite as many features, but you know, it's a small price to pay, if you ask me. Yeah, what else have we got? We've got our website, which has got plenty of reviews, and all our podcasts are on there, and different articles. Dave did a very good review of The Third Man recently, so I'll put a link to that below, and you can check out Dave's thoughts on that classic film noir.
And of course, if you enjoy our content, you can support us not only by liking and sharing and commenting on all the social media and on YouTube, because that helps us out. But if you want to help us out financially as well, if you can drop us a donation at Buy Me a Coffee, buy us a cappuccino, buy us a latte, help keep the lights on. Or if you want to subscribe, we're on Patreon as well. You can become a patron and support us that way. Every penny is deeply appreciated. And a big shout out to
Monica on Buy Me a Coffee, who's given us loads of support this year. And of course, as always, to Shell and Shayne, who are on our Patreon and have supported us there. Should also say Shell sometimes chips in and buys us some coffees as well. So double thanks to Shell for being such a legend. But thanks to all three of you for supporting us that way. And also across social medias, you know, likes, reposts, the rest of it. Couldn't say thank you enough to all three of you. So yeah, there we go. That's us. Anything else before we go off, our David?
No, not really. Just what a great year it's been. We're now getting into the season, I'd say earlier, to watch Muppets Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life and Die Hard. And
here's three Christmas movies for you you've probably never seen, but definitely should make room for this year. One is called The Bishop's Wife. It's got Cary Grant, David Niven, and Loretta Young. If you like things like It's a Wonderful Life, stuff like that, check this movie out. It's brilliant. I know it's The Bishop's Wife. It's a bit sort of title, but check it out. It's magical. It'll make everything feel that much more Christmassy if you watch it. The same goes for Remember the Night. Now, this is Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck a few years before they start together in the famous film noir Double Indemnity. One of the great film noirs, one of the ones we started our podcast endeavor talking about. They did this Christmas movie together anyway called Remember the Night. She basically is accused of stealing some jewelry from one of these big department stores. He's the lawyer that's supposed to prosecute her, but because the trial happens just before Christmas, the judge has mercy on her and says we'll reconvene after Christmas because and Fred McMurray pushes for that because he thinks no jury will convict a young, beautiful woman on Christmas Eve. And he wants to get a conviction, so it's in his interest to sort of postpone it. But then the judge puts her in his charge, and he basically has to take her home for Christmas. They fall in love, don't they? You know, and she meets the family, and it's brilliant. Check it out. Remember the Night. Barbara Stanwyck, Fred McMurray. Again, will make everything feel much more Christmassy. And the last one of the three I was going to mention to check out is also Barbara Stanwyck. It's a bit more fun, this one. It's kind of like a goofball comedy Christmas movie. It's called Christmas in Connecticut. Check that out too. All three fantastic black and white Christmas movies. You can't go wrong with them. Every one of them will make it feel even more like Christmas.
Classics from yesterday.
Exactly. I mean, everyone knows It's a Wonderful Life, and a lot of people watch it every single year. But if you like that kind of era of movies and wanting to see something you've maybe never heard of, talking to you as well, Dave, check those 3 out. I watched all 3 of them last year. I'm definitely watching all 3 of them again this year because they were so magical and Christmassy and special. Loved it.
Absolutely. And a modern one, if you want a modern one thrown into the mix, Last Train to Christmas with Michael Shayne. Really great Christmas film from a couple of years ago now. But yeah.
Oh,
that's it. Christmas films.
That was hilarious. And Holdovers, you'll be watching that again.
The Holdovers, great film as well. And another modern one to add to the pantheon.
I'll put our review or our conversation about that in a link below as well. And that's it. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Hope you've all had a good one. Because we're going to have to brace for impact. 2025 is going to be a bit of a roller coaster, I reckon.
Yes.
We're all going to have to be ready for it. So, fight the power. That's what I say. Okay, thanks again for joining us. This has been Greg and Dave of More Movies Podcast. We hope to see you in 2025. Take care of yourselves. And as always, keep watching more movies.
That's it for this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And remember to like, share and subscribe right here on YouTube. For more film reviews and articles, check out our website moremovies.co.uk. And join us on social media at More Movies For You. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all across the board. You know the score. If you enjoy what we do, please consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com or join us on one of our packages on Patreon. The links are in the description down below. And for more filmtastic content, click one of the buttons on screen now.